Did you know that less than 20% of the general population actually achieves the goals that they set for themselves? A Harvard business study reveals that most people are not even clear on what their goals are. Now, if you want to be in the winner's circle and join the ranks of people who achieve the things that they set out to do in life, stick around because I've got some powerful tips and strategies to share with you that will get you on the fast track to success. Welcome to the Driven Male Podcast. This is your host, Professor, helping you to find your passion, discover your purpose, and achieve the life of the high-status man. This is personal development for the guys, and if you find this podcast to be of any value, please like, comment, subscribe, give me a review, and or feel free to download this content. You can also follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/The Driven Male, on Twitter at twitter.com/Driven Male. Keep in mind, there's no the before the word driven on my Twitter page. And finally, you can check out my episodes at my official website at www.thedrivenmale.com. So, with that out of the way, let's get into today's topic, achieving your goals and the secrets of success. So now, success is a very broad topic, and it's something that I'm sure you've heard a lot about from other speakers, teachers, authors, success and happiness experts, business experts, people talking about being able to get all the things that you want out of life, the secrets of success, the secrets of happiness, the secrets of wealth. And I would like to approach this topic from a slightly different perspective. Basically, the two main points that I really want to hone in on, number one is simply defining what success means to you specifically. And then we're going to take a look at one really huge caveat, and that is adopting the particular identity that you're going to have in order to achieve the success that you want. So there's a price to pay for success, okay? And it's very important that you're clear on that, and that you are willing to accept whatever the consequences are of pursuing the particular sort of success that you may want. All right. So let's take a look at the first one, defining what success means to you. So basically, it boils down to making sure that the definition of success that you have set for yourself in your mind is really coming from you and not from your parents, not from your pastor at church, not from any sort of influential figure in your life, or figures if there were more than one of them. And these people might hold a very high esteem in your mind. They may hold a very special place in your heart. And they may have impressed upon you certain ideas of success, certain concepts with relationship to happiness and to fulfillment in life. And those values and those perspectives on success were passed on to you because that's what they perceived to be success. All right. See, when we're growing up, when we're small children, we really have very little choice over what happens to us in our lives. And particularly with regards to the ways in which we think, the different ideas that we adopt as we're coming up, we basically act like little sponges that just go along sort of absorbing the various influences from our immediate environment. And if you understand this principle very well, you know that there are multiple influences coming into your mind at any given point in time in your life This is especially true for children. The older that you get, you tend to have more filters to block out certain things. You can exercise more conscious control over what you allow into your sphere of influence. But as a child, you literally are just like a sponge. And, you go around just picking up stuff and absorbing it into your consciousness and into your way of thinking and being in the world. And that's why they call childhood the formative years, because it really is a situation in which you learn through osmosis. And the people in your immediate sphere of influence, whether it's your parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, older siblings, your pastor at church, political figures that you might have been closely associated with, if you had a family that, had a lot of political ties or what have you. See, all of these different areas of influence have the ability to impress upon you certain ideas that you carry with you, in most cases, for the remainder of your life. And they basically paint the picture of what success should be. So the operative word there is should, because you feel a lot of pressure to live up to those expectations. And anything that even looks like it might remotely deviate from that path, you don't want to have anything to do with, even if it is something that is truly coming from your heart. And then you also have societal pressures. So, the things that are socially acceptable. This could be on a mass scale, stuff that is accepted in mainstream society, or it could be just in your community. But at every turn in the road, you have some sort of standard that you're always subconsciously trying to live up to. And because of that, your definition of success for you might become a little bit skewed. And what this has the potential to do, and it's very unfortunate that this happens, but it's a fact of life. Typically what happens in these circumstances is that you become internally conflicted. You develop dichotomies within yourself where on one hand, you feel as if you want something because you were told that you should want it. But then on the other hand, you may want something completely the opposite of that. But that thing that you want that is the opposite, it flies in the face of the people whom you love and care about, and they love and care about you. And it sets up, it basically sets the scene for a lot of internal conflict. And that can be very stressful because you're in a tug of war with yourself. And let's say, for example, that you're a person who just happens to be a little more bold, a little more courageous on the part of just having the willingness to follow your heart despite of, the potential consequences of losing the love and the respect and the acceptance of those that are closest to you. If you are such a person who, is just really adamant about walking to the beat of their own drum, then, there's a price to pay for that. You could be ostracized. You could be, shut out of your circle. And this is very painful because one of the most basic and fundamental human needs that we have is the need for love and acceptance. And that's why, when we have these ideas placed upon us, of success and of anything that is socially acceptable or unacceptable, it is so hard to go against those things because we feel like going against them would be almost, the equivalent of death. And in a lot of ways, this is true. It's not a physical death, of course, but it is a death in your association with certain people who have made it very clear that if you, if you violate these unwritten rules of what we deem to be acceptable for you, then you ain't got no love here, baby. I mean, it's a cold world, and that's how a lot of close-knit families and communities operate. So let's say, for example, you come from a very religious background. Your parents were hardcore churchgoers. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just the way it was. You were at church a minimum of 2 to 3 times a week. Lots of influence in the church, very close to your pastor, whoever the influential figures were in that social gathering. Okay. And so now, of course, with every religion, there are rules that must be followed. And you, within your heart, you desire for something that might go against that. Or let's just say that you are a person who questions and challenges certain things, and with a lot of religions, questioning, challenging, investigating certain ideas is forbidden, because you are supposed to take certain ideas on faith. Faith is, faith is a powerful thing. I'm not trying to make light of faith. However, there's a difference between faith and blind faith. And that's kind of a different podcast episode that I can do later. But if you are a person who is more inclined to challenge certain ideas, then that can pose a serious threat to the circle that you're in, to the people that you associate with. And so there is definitely a lot of potential there for being ostracized and being cut off from the people who are essentially part of your family. When you find that you spend the vast majority of your time trying to live up to the standards and to the expectations and to the definitions of success and happiness and fulfillment, rather than investigating what those things really mean to you, basically, this can set you up for a life of sheer misery. And it's something that you might be able to numb yourself to for quite some time. You might be able to go for a period of years, not even really considering what you've done to yourself, which is basically, you have cut yourself off from your own internal guidance system. See, we all have an internal compass, and, our compass will point us in various directions based upon what is going to be good for our own growth and evolution and development. Now, because our parents and, certain influential people in our lives, since they hold such high esteem to us, since they hold those very special places in our hearts, we are very inclined to think and to believe that they know what's best for us. And I can say that, if you are a small child, let's say you're a toddler or, a grade school age child who is very inexperienced at life and very unfamiliar with how life works, and you're just not very, adept at dealing with certain situations. Yes, in those particular cases, in those certain instances, then yes, your guardians may very well know what's best for you. But there comes a point when a child is maturing into a young adult that they start to develop their own mind. And, Usually by this time, depending on the sort of conditioning that the child received, depending on the sort of conditioning that you received as you were growing up, you may have received certain subtle messages that, in essence said, don't think for yourself. Always consult with someone who you perceive to know more than you about a particular subject. But don't think for yourself. Don't question, don't challenge. And this can be, something that leads you down a path that is least desired. So, as you're growing up and you're starting to come into your own sense of self, you're starting to develop your own thoughts and feelings and opinions and perspectives and life philosophies, you can enter into a place where it becomes hard to maintain your authenticity while simultaneously keeping the people, who are most important to you in your life happy. And, most often what happens is that, you come at a crossroads where you're going to have to choose. You're going to have to decide, okay, do I go left or do I go right? Do I continue to force myself to adhere to these rules and regulations that have been imposed upon me, basically? Or do I start to go within and do the internal work to see for myself what works for me? So when this comes to the topic of success, as I said, we go through our adult lives working hard, raising up our families if we decide to have our own families, and we're trying to build and craft and mold and shape a life that resembles success. But this success is most often nothing more than a carbon copy of someone else's idea of success. See, for a lot of people, they chase money and fame and power. Now, money, fame, and power are all very alluring and very attractive to the average person. But for, a certain percentage of the population, these particular people don't really care about that stuff that much. But society says, okay, well, this is what you should be going after because this is what's going to make you happy. This is what's going to make you powerful. This is what's going to make you popular among your peers. This is what's going to give you the greatest amount of flexibility and resources to pursue the things that you want to pursue in your life. And trust me, I'm not trying to devalue money or fame or power. All of those things are great to have, but they can be abused. And you just have to, as a healthy, functioning adult with a sense of reasonable judgment, you have to be able to decide for yourself what the cost is of pursuing those things and whether or not you are willing to pay that price. So, getting back to the people who may or may not care so much for money and fame and power, these particular people may desire a more simplistic life, a quieter life, a life of what some would consider to be mediocrity. And there's nothing inherently wrong with mediocrity. There's just certain things that go along with it, just like there's certain things that go along with anything in life, You just have to decide for yourself what you are willing to accept and deal with. What is the price that you're willing to pay? But for the people who are okay with mediocrity, certain people in their lives might have sent the message to them that you should always be striving for more. You should always be working to achieve more. You should always be trying to reach that next level. And, I just happen to be a person that is all about growth and progression. So I kind of happen to lean more in the direction of that paradigm of thought. But Like I said, there's nothing right or wrong with either one. It's just what you decide to do for yourself and with your life. For people who are okay with mediocrity, they might feel a lot of pressure to constantly be trying to get someplace that they really don't want to be, but that everyone around them or that certain, speakers, motivational speakers, authors, teachers might have told them that this is what you should be striving for, because a life of mediocrity is no life at all. Which, I think it's kind of unfair to say that. I mean, to each his own, or to each her own. We all have the right and the freedom to decide for ourselves what success truly means for us. And I can tell you from personal experience, I can't say that there's no greater pain, but it's definitely a hell of a thing to invest so much time, so much work. You toil day and night for something that deep down you really could care less for, but you feel a responsibility to live up to that ideal. And it just causes so much stress, so much internal conflict, and you lose so much of your life, by doing stuff like that. There is a lot to be said for simplicity. There is a lot to be said for just the things in life that we take for granted and consider the mundane, such as just waking up in the morning and stepping outside your door to watch the sunrise, or watching the sun set, just sitting quietly and listening to nature. There's a lot to be said for just sitting and spending time with loved ones, for taking time with friends, and to do recreational activities that rejuvenate the spirit and just kind of bring you back to that childhood essence of being carefree and not having to be dealing with the constant pressures of worrying about your damn bills and this thing over here and that thing over there. Oh, I got this appointment on Tuesday. Oh, I got this thing going on over here. What so-and-so is up to. There's a lot to be said for just being able to be, to just simply be. And as strange or as downright foolish as this may sound to you, simply being in and of itself is a form of success. Now, whether or not that's the type of success that you desire to experience in your life, that is totally up to you. That is your choice. But I don't think that anyone has the right to define success for anyone else. We all have a tendency to lust after, like I said, the things, money, power, fame, the ability to do whatever the hell you want when you want. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of pros to having those things, and there's a lot of cons to having those things as well. Just like there are pros and cons to anything in life. And you have to take the time to sit down and meditate on this stuff and decide for yourself, hey, this is the price that I'm willing to pay to have X. Or this is what I'm not willing to do to have X. Only you can make those decisions and come to those conclusions. Only you can do those things. But one of the major keys and secrets of success that I'm just trying to make sure that you understand is it's purely subjective. And it is it's purely relative, and it is subjective to each individual. If you have siblings, if you have relatives, and these are people that are really, really close to us, right? They're like in our more immediate sphere of influence, and they're doing things that draw a lot of attention to themselves. They might be star athletes. They might be whiz kids, your proverbial whiz kid academically. They might be geniuses of some sort. They might be, talented singers, dancers, performers. They might be corporate ladder climbers. They might be people who are highly successful in the corporate world. They might have a lot of degrees, and you feel the pressure to try and live up to them, to try and measure yourself up to them. That's another really big mistake that people often make, is comparing themselves. And I have done it, and I still make the mistake of doing it from time to time. I'm a little more self-aware now and conscious of when I do it, and I tend to be more vigilant about preventing myself from doing that, because it just sets you up for misery and for suffering. We are all individuals, and I don't give a damn if you grew up in the same family or in the same household as somebody else. You are unique. And your life is a reflection of your uniqueness. It's a fingerprint. It is a signature that cannot be replicated or reproduced. There's only one you. And you have to honor and love and respect the you that you are. That is also a huge aspect of success that people overlook or disregard or downplay, because it's not the type of success that gets glorified in personal development and in our culture. Simplicity, the basics, the fundamentals are not placed on the same pedestals as the money and the fame and the power and the career success and all of these other things that we lust after and chase after and spend so much of our time toiling to try and achieve. And I'm not, again, trying to diminish the importance of having a successful career. The name of my podcast is The Driven Male. And part of what I do, part of my aim, is to help make males productive human beings. So, but that is a reflection of what I value. That is a reflection of my definition of success. It's not the totality of what I believe success to be, but it is a huge aspect of it. And I attract those males who agree with me and who are on a mission to become more productive individuals and people who are contributing. But if you don't value those things, then that's your business, and that is your right. You have the freedom to value what you value. And there can be a lot of pressure in being authentically who you are. If you don't value the same things as your family, as your parents, as your siblings, as your uncles, aunts, and whoever the hell it is, it doesn't even matter. If your values differ, if you walk to the beat of a different drum, your own unique drum that you and you alone came into this world with, there can be a tremendous amount of pressure to be your true, authentic self. But brother, it's the only way to live, to truly, truly live. So, I'm going to move on to the second point, but to close on that first one, defining what success means to you is one of the first and most crucial steps that you can take to building a solid foundation for your life. Do not waste time, energy, and resources worrying about stuff that you can't control and trying to create something and build something that you really don't even give a damn about. That is such a waste. And when you finally do achieve that thing, if you're able to stay motivated for long enough to build it and to create it, when you finally do achieve it, you'll be so empty inside. and you'll be stuck trying to figure out what the hell is wrong. You'll be sitting back thinking, damn, I've got this success now. What the hell is wrong now? What's missing now? What more could I possibly want? Why am I still unhappy? Because you didn't take the time to sit the hell down and define your picture of success. So please don't skip over that. It sounds so simplistic, so basic, but those are the real jewels of life. The true wisdom is in those simplistic, mundane things that we take for granted and deem as being less significant, because they're not as flashy, they're not as shiny as everything else that gets pushed up and glorified in our culture, and especially within the world of personal development. Sit down and define what success truly means to you. Please do that for yourself. The second point that I think is important for us to address, and this is a big one, and I've got a personal story that I'm going to share with you on this point here. The second point is you need to ask yourself when it comes to trying to achieve success, and this is going to be especially true if you're finding yourself having trouble staying motivated. You keep falling off the wagon, so to speak. If you find that is happening to you, then you need to consider something. Whose identity have you adopted? Ask yourself that question. Whose identity have you adopted? Now, if that makes absolutely no sense to you, I'm going to explain it. Just give me a second. All right. So, some time ago, I came to a very powerful epiphany about myself. I had a very, very powerful insight about myself. Oh man, this blew my head off. I was just sitting doing some meditation. I'm really big on meditation and calming the mind, being in that place of solace and quiet, because that's when a lot of my ideas and inspirations come to me, whether it's for writing, speaking, whatever. And oh man, this blew my mind. I had an epiphany about myself where I came to the realization and the understanding that, one of the primary reasons for why I had been struggling so much in my life, especially in terms of trying to establish myself in the career world. I have always been somebody who had an entrepreneurial spirit. Always been someone who wanted to do my own thing, so to speak. Never really wanted to spend my life working for someone else. But in this moment, I realized that one of the reasons why I had struggled for so long to build a successful business, and why I was still hopping from job to job, going here, going there, doing this, doing that, was because I was trying to keep my father's memory alive. You see, my father passed away from prostate cancer, and this was some time ago, and I remember hearing someone say that when you lose someone close to you like that, you want to make sure that you remember them often. Because if you don't, it's like they died twice. They died physically, and you basically killed them off a second time by refusing or just neglecting to keep them in your memory. And I came to a very powerful realization that although I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur, I grew up watching my father work for a living. My father was a service technician for a gas company. And, that man would pull crazy hours. I mean, it was nothing for him to work 12 to 14 hours. And that was just a typical average day. He could work, he could pull double shifts. I mean, this dude had work ethic out the ass. And I, so admired and respected him for that. It was truly amazing to watch. At the same time, though, I knew that I didn't want that to be me. As much as I admired his sacrifice to take care of us, his children and his family, I still knew deep down within myself that I did not want to have to work for somebody for my entire life. But I couldn't get myself to do what was necessary to succeed at being an entrepreneur, because subconsciously I was trying to keep my father's memory alive by emulating how he lived. See, my father was all for, being an entrepreneur, having the freedom to make your own money and do your own thing. He was all for that, but the way that he lived was he worked for someone else. He was a working man. He was a blue-collar, working-class man, hard-working man. And I grew up watching him do that. So although he was for entrepreneurship, the example that he set, the visual example that he set for us, particularly for me, because I was observing him, was get a good job, make good money, and work, and retire, and then die shortly thereafter. That was the example. That was what I saw. That was what I witnessed day in and day out from this man. He worked his damn ass off. And subconsciously, I felt like allowing myself to have all the things that he didn't have, allowing myself to experience the level of success that he never got to experience, was in a way saying that I didn't love him. It was in a way saying that, in essence, it was kind of like saying, "Oh, fuck you, Dad. Yeah, see, I'm living better than your ass did. Look at here. Look at what I did." And I didn't want to disrespect him like that. I didn't want to feel like I was violating his memory like that. You know how, when certain people who hold a very high esteem to us pass away, we have certain rituals that we engage in to try and keep their memory alive. We might do something once a year. We have something on the anniversary of their death. We go through some sort of ritual. We go through some sort of process that commemorates them and helps us to keep their legacy alive and their memory alive. Well, that's what I was doing, but with my lifestyle, rather than like some annual event or ritual that I would put on and engage in. I was doing that with my lifestyle, with my life choices, and with my commitment to working for a living instead of building my empire. I wanted to keep my father alive by living how he lived. I wanted to emulate him and the values that he had and his definition of success, going back to that first point that I just touched on. Okay. This is powerful stuff, brothers. The driven male, there's so many layers to being a driven male. This is the type of stuff that you have to look at. These are the types of layers that you have to be willing to dig into. You have to be willing to go deep. You have to be willing to go into the basement. And I mean, even deeper than that. See, these are the types of thoughts and subconscious behavioral patterns that hold us from the very success that we claim to want so damn badly. It's this type of shit. And when I came to that realization about myself, when I made that connection, I broke down in tears. I broke down in tears because it really did feel like I was leaving him behind to allow myself to have success and happiness and money and just any and all the things that I've ever dreamed of. It would, in essence, be the equivalent of leaving my father behind and killing him a second time. Powerful, powerful stuff. So that's why I say the second point that you have to consider, especially if you find yourself having trouble with trying to manifest, the success that you want, is you got to take a look at, okay, whose identity have I adopted? Who am I trying to appease here? Subconsciously now. This is not something that you're going to have conscious awareness of. I mean, we rarely ever do these sort of self-sabotaging behaviors consciously. It's almost impossible, and you can't do it. It's like saying, I'm gonna take a hammer and smash the shit out of my hand, and do it consciously, do it willingly. You're not gonna do no crazy stuff like that. You're not gonna do it. You're not gonna go out of your way to hurt yourself. All of this stuff is done subconsciously. It's part of your conditioning, your programming. And the reason why it's so deeply rooted in our being is because it's emotional. Emotions are way more powerful than logic, far more superior to mere logic is the power and the presence of emotions. Far more so. And, it's just one of those things where you really can't even begin to do the internal work on yourself until you are willing to get in touch with your feelings. See, as guys, we've been conditioned to detach ourselves from our feelings. Yeah, I'm not saying that you got to get in touch with your feminine side, all that kind of. I mean, we'll save that for another podcast, because there's nothing wrong with let me just say this about that really, really quick. Okay. You have masculine and feminine energy. Both energies are necessities for human growth and development. Both energies are essential to life. They would not exist if it weren't so. And the proper balancing and integration and incorporation of the masculine and the feminine is what contributes to healthy human development. Okay. Now, I don't want to get too deep into that in this episode. We'll save that for another time. But yes, brothers, we have to get back in touch with our feelings again. And this may involve tears. It may involve you crying. I just told you that when I came to the realization that I came to about the relationship I had with my father and how I was subconsciously holding myself back from success because I felt like it was going to be me essentially saying I didn't love my own daddy. That brought me to tears. Okay. But it's in those raw moments of vulnerability that we gain some of our deepest levels of awareness of ourselves. Okay. I mean, we can't deny the significance of that. You just can't. And if you're not willing to go deep within yourself to find these things out, you may struggle for a very long time, unnecessarily, to achieve the success and the happiness that you desire and that you deserve, brother, that you deserve. So please, take the time to consider whose identity you have adopted, whose memory you might be trying to keep alive, whose ideals you might be trying to live up to, whose standard of success you may be trying to live up to. All of these things have to be taken into account. All of these things must be considered in order to really get down to the nitty-gritty, as they say, of figuring out how you can optimize your life and be as happy and prosperous as you can possibly be. So, in closing, I would just like to say thank you for joining me on another episode of The Driven Male, helping you to find your passion, discover your purpose, and achieve the life of the high-status man. This is personal development for the guys, and if you find this podcast to be of any value, please like, comment, subscribe, give me a review, and or feel free to download this content. You can also follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/The Driven Male, on Twitter at twitter.com/Driven Male, and you can also check out my episodes at my official website at thedrivenmale.com. Again, this is Professor signing off, and as always, stay driven.